Here's a very nice professional grade Altec Lansing 9442A power amplifier. I believe there's other ones in this series, just a 9442, a 9446A. You can look all of those up, but these are all professional. I shouldn't have said professional grade. They are professional. It's all metal, everything you see here, except for the two strips of trim at the top and bottom of this faceplate. Those are plastic that have the printing on them. It's rack mountable, as you can see. It's got protection light, clip lights. Very professional. And I will tell you, I did have to briefly pop this open, and I had to remove the 4 screws and the trim piece only at the top. Then there's 3 screws on each side. You have to take those out, and then I'll show you around back the screws and explain what you have to do and why I had to pop it open. So looking around back, if you look at that date, June 28th, 1991, I acquired this almost exactly 30 years to the day from that. This had been in a high school auditorium, and I knew enough about it that it had barely been used, and I was correct. So this thing is in beautiful condition. Outside slightly scuffed up on the top, as you can see, but nothing horrendous. It cleaned right up. Professional grade power cord. It's got a fuse socket there, and I checked the fuse, and that was still good. As far as those screws I mentioned, aside from the ones in that trim piece along the top and the 3 on each side, the 2 on the left of this photo, on top and below the Altec Lansing logo, those need to come out, and then there's 2 more on the other side of the back that you'll see in a second. Those would need to come out. Moving to this photo, pretty self-explanatory. XLR inputs. You could also do bare wire inputs at the bottom. The 2 channel pots, those were in good shape. Didn't need to fiddle with those at all. If it's in bridge mode, mono mode, the channel 1 pot controls the level in tandem for both channels. And the 2 sockets in the center for accessories, if you're not using accessories, which this school wasn't, you put in those jumpers and you're in good shape. So if you get one of these, you're wondering it's having some issues, maybe you would need to deoxit the channel pots. Maybe those jumpers aren't in properly or in all the way. I did see little bits of wires still, because they just clipped the wires and then took this thing out of service. Little bits of wires into the input screws near the bottom. I had to remove those. You can't see them, by the way, in this photo, but there are 2 small screws below those input screw terminals. Those would need to come out if you're opening this thing. The 4 screws you see in the center of this image along the accessory sockets, those don't need to come out. Just the 2 that aren't really visible that are closer to the bottom. The bottom right, that dual bridge mode switch, that was the only issue I had. It had been sitting in bridge mode for 30 years, so when I switched it out, nothing happened. I had to pop the top, deoxit that, and worked it back and forth for 30 seconds, and everything was good to go after I put it back together. This last image will show you on the right those other 2 screws on either side of the warning printing. Those are the other ones that need to come out if you need to open this thing up. So remember, the 4 in the front along the top, 3 on each side, the 2 you're seeing here alongside the warning text, the 2 in that same position on the other side by the Altec Lansing logo, and then the 2 that I haven't been able to show you that are near the bottom center of the back under those screw terminals. This image is pretty self-explanatory. You got the serial number, the dual bridge mode switch, and then of course the speaker terminals. So now let's have a listen just briefly to what this sounds like. I realize it's not going to sound great through an iPhone microphone, but it'll give you some idea of what these things can do, because I'm really a big fan of this amplifier. I forgot to mention earlier, once you have all those screws out, if you're needing to open this, the top sort of slides back. It's an L shape. It's all one piece. The top panel and the rear metal panel is all one L-shaped piece that just sort of slides backwards, and then you can get inside. I was able to get this photo of the transformer, which is pretty serious looking, so that I could show all of you. I did not get a photo. There is a ribbon of cables all together, like you'd see in computers, that connects the accessory pots to the main motherboard, which is mounted along the bottom. Make sure that that is snugly in place if you have to open one of these to work on it, because if you put this back together and it wasn't snugly put back into place, either end of those, then you're going to have issues. It's not going to work properly. It'll go into protection mode. That happened to me, and fortunately nothing was damaged, but for a few seconds I thought, oh no, I've made the problem worse after opening this. So I popped it back open, made sure that that cable, either end of it, was very securely onto all the pins. It's got, a dozen pins on either end that it connects to, and then I was in perfect shape.